Out of Cruel Space into a Wider Galaxy, Part 26. For Newest England, the man simply smiles at her for a bit. She has no idea what to say or expect. Tea? He asks her. What? Tea? It's a hot drink, locally produced actually, he says, and she blinks. I haven't heard of it before. Shelley says, and he sighs. One of many tragedies upon this world, although it's likely one of the few that you yourself are not personally aware of or impacted by, the man says. Something prickles at the back of her plating, right in the joints. Her mother always taught her to pay attention to that, and her mother didn't raise a fool. Your real name isn't Wetsworth, is it? Very well spotted. I knew there was something to you. He compliments her, not actively confirming her suspicion while also answering the question completely. Who are you? I am a very concerned citizen. This beautiful world is in the grip of 4 squabbling tyrants that failed to properly break off from the Gavali Empire. The empire itself is ludicrous in many of its policies and would have brought about its own destruction by now if not for the fact that only a single small laneway connects these systems to the wider galaxy, and therefore isn't anyone's real concern. The man says, and her eyebrows climb up, and she sits back a little to reevaluate him. Her old training kicks in, and she scans him. He's armed. There are multiple expanded spaces on him, and they're all deep enough that there could be anything in there. The man could suddenly invert things, and she'd find herself fighting someone in full power armor. Ah, good you're paying proper attention. So as we wait for... He begins before turning to the upcoming waitress. I'd like the menus now, please, and some more hot water in another mug if you'd be so kind. I'd like to share what I'm drinking with my friend here. Oh, of course. Is your friend? She's here for a business proposition. One I think she'll like. Thank you, he says, throwing the waitress a wink, and she blushes brightly before rushing off. He then takes a sip of his drink and regards Shelley again. Would it make you feel more comfortable if I were to hand one of my weapons over? I assure you it will work for you as well as me. It's not bio-coded like the Imperial Army munitions. How do you know that? She asks, and then frowns a little as he clearly scans the area, and then turns on a signal jammer while he leans forward. Because I mean to take this world from the Empire. Permanently, he states softly, and her eyes widen in shock. He then leans back and deactivates the jammer. Who are you? Me? I'm your new best friend, Madam Patriot. You want the best for your beloved homeworld? That's me. I mean to take it. How? With ease. However, the hows and whys of my conquest are not of concern to you. No. The concern to you, my dear, is what happens after, he says. What comes after? She asks, as the waitress returns with the menus and gets a dazzling smile from the very handsome but clearly very dangerous man. The girl outright skips back to get the hot water and mug. Defending, rebuilding, growing. I need people who love Laveron down to the depths of their being, and those with the knowledge and skill to support it by my side. Those that merely have knowledge and skill are easy to sway with a properly padded paycheck, but a patriot, someone motivated by love? Well, that's a bit more tricky, but equally as important, if not more so. Is it? I was told that I was an archaic fool pining for a yesteryear that never happened. Without bonds to hold a community together, it shatters. Those that told that to you did so with only ill intent. Of that I can assure you. Why, as an avowed patriot myself, I dare say I find the company of other such patriotic souls a comfort. And what are you patriotic to? She asks before the waitress comes back and promises to come back in a few minutes. She's sent away with a goofy smile as the man offers an early tip for such prompt and exceptional service. Why are you buttering her up like that? She's going to remember nothing about today, but that it was the day a very handsome man made her feel like a queen and paid her like one. She won't remember you beyond the most vague details when pressed, he promises her, and her eyes shoot back and forth as she puts it together. This man is a spy of some kind. He is up to something, and he's playing the people around him like puppets to dance exactly how he wants them to and to see what he wants them to see and nothing else. And why is this so important? When planning sedition, some privacy is needed. Out in the open? Like this? Yes, he says. Everyone is so busy with their lives that they won't do more than ogle me for a moment and then move on. However, your apartment is bugged, and while I could do something about that, I doubt you want me to go through your personal effects and ripping out the walls to get them all. Okay, that's my limit. What do you want from me? I'm going to wipe out the Vatras and when I'm done. That's the sort of thing you say when the signal jammer is on. She snaps at him. Only if the jammer doesn't work by sending out a very, very aggressive worm program to strategically erase my voice from any recording. And if they get around it? I like excitement, he says with a smirk and a sip of his drink. And why do you want me? I was a middling officer at best at the very height of my career. My troops were only a few steps away from being ceremonial, and would have been if we had the budget for it. True. However, you and your troops had a very important trait in common. Patriotism, he says before turning and smiling at the waitress. Hello again, dear woman. That's a lovely trick you've done with your hair. Oh, is it? I couldn't. Order. Your order, please. Certainly. My friend and I both think the gallery salad looks exceptional, he says, and she nods before taking both menus and leaving with a spring in her step. It takes so little to make a public place outright private. He pulls out a small case, and rather it being a weapon or anything. It's filled with a series of small, perforated cloth bags. He tosses one into the mug that had been brought for Shelley, and then pours the hot water that had arrived onto it. What's that? What drew me to your world, so you best be grateful for it. Grateful? I don't even understand who or what you are, or what this is. Tea. One of your local plants is an evolutionary sibling to something found on my homeworld. Something so valuable that empires, fortunes, and lives have been lost in its pursuit. In ancient times, it was the drink of rebels and plotters. In more classical times, it was the drink of the well-heeled and dignified. Now it is the drink of nations, a uniting force across disparate languages, peoples, and creeds. Well, I suppose with a history like that, I can hardly refuse, Shelley says before a hint of paranoia has her swap mugs with him. Oh, fresher tea. Delightful, the man says, taking a sip. That wouldn't work either way. I'm human. You'll have to look very hard for something that's awful enough to make me die from it. With a sigh, she trades the mugs back. It was a pointless gesture then. But it does raise another question, as if she didn't have an entire legion of them. His grip on the mug tightens in frustration, and she looks him plain in the face. Just spill it. What do you want? She demands, and he holds up a finger before the waitress arrives with their salads. She delivers with a little spin, and he offers light applause before giving her another bit of a pre-tip, and she skips away. I want you to reactivate your soldiers. I want you to re-vet them to ensure they're still patriots. I'll supply you with weapons, equipment, and a safe place to muster. I'm taking this world, but to hold it, I need people willing to fight and kill for it. I want Laveron to be the next part of the British Empire, and like all our colonies, former and current, I want it to thrive. I want it strong. I want it wealthy. I want it to be a crowning jewel that shines brighter than its star, he explains before pointing up towards the noonday sun. She just stares at him. He smirks and then picks up his utensils to start eating. After a few moments, he gives her an odd look. I didn't buy that salad for the look, Shelley. Eat. Are you insane? She asks him. No, I'm very good, but as I get some things moving, I need to start others. And I'm part of your master plan? Your name is penciled in, your attributes are inked in. Pardon? Oh dear, excuse me. Pencils are a writing implement and ink is as well. Pencil markings can be erased, ink cannot. So while you yourself are not my only option, I'm only choosing from people with a deep love of this world and a desire to protect it, he says. So if you don't feel like you're up for helping your world become everything you dreamed of and shaping history, stop the sale, she says, and he quiets down. She points at him. You, a man, a single man, a foreigner, a stranger, an alien who has likely been on this world for less time than I've been between jobs. You think you can just come here and make everything better? What kind of hubris do you have to think that all our issues are easily solved? Do you have any ideas how powerful the Vatras are? Do you have any idea what the Empire's stance on them are? Each Vatras has an army that has at minimum 1 million people strong. They command trillions in credits worth of resources casually, and each has a long history of slamming down on rebellion and uprisings with enough force that several lakes on Laveron are in fact the filled-in craters where there used to be towns. And with all that power, the Empire thinks of them as an amusing annoyance, and their policy is that they can have their fun. But if they try to spread their silliness, then they'll be broken all the way down to the atomic level under laser barrage. He explains and she nods. I've already started to work onto all four of them. The fun thing about strong, paranoid opponents is that they're easily pointed to each other. What? Shelley, I'm not asking for blind faith. I'm not asking you to throw your life away, he says before pulling out a piece of paper and pen, before writing down an address and a time. All I'm asking is a second little date for you to see exactly what I'm going to do for you in Laveron. I see, she says and considers for a few moments. Someone like this was dangerous. Very, very dangerous. If they can't live up to their boasting, then they'll kick the Vatras into a frenzy. If they do succeed, then the rest of the Gavali Empire will slam down. I see. And what happens if I don't like what I see? No one will believe you, and by the time anyone does, everything you know will either be out of date or painfully obvious. So I'm not concerned, he says, and she just narrows her eyes at him. You're awfully certain of that. I am completely certain, but if you feel the need to push against it, by all means do so. But please understand that an opportunity like this is once in a lifetime. Do you want to heal Laveron? Of course I do, but I question whether a single man is capable of such. She replies and he nods. Well, you have the time and place. If you want more of a show, arrive early, he offers. Still, I think we've gotten as far as we can today. You know where to be if you want some evidence. Otherwise, well, you can go back to a fruitless job search. She takes the paper from him and frowns. It's dated for tomorrow evening. She arrives 2 hours early. Not like she has anything to do, and it's not like she won't be aware of anyone accepting her applications if she gets an answer. In the distance, she can see a great deal of commotion kicking off. Security forces are being suddenly hit by a building they were checking before an army gets involved. Then another branch of it comes in, and before anything can happen, one of the vehicles veers away from the rest and then seems to fade away from sight. At a distance, that cloaking is exceptional, but up close, it's clear that there's something approaching, something that lands next to her, and a door opens in the clearly distorted air. Come in, please. She enters and finds several tied up and unconscious Blythe troopers and Wetsworth in the pilot's seat. These ships don't have a cloaking function. No, but the trinity of drones I stuck to each side do. Now you're a little too early and things aren't quite finished. But if you'd be so kind as to strap yourself in as the show kicks off. What are you doing? Why fight 4 big enemies when they can fight each other to your benefit? He asks simply. By the by, you never told me what you thought of the tea. Needed some sweetener. Jam and cream, perhaps? He offers. Maybe. So talk. What do you want to show me? Beyond the battered and beaten forces of the Vatras, I've stolen enough older munitions to arm your unit thrice over. With this safe haven being compromised, it's being abandoned. And they're going to grab all the wrong things in their abandonment. What's the thing they should grab? The map and key cards to the nearby old military bases. They're collecting dust and little else in there. And while the equipment in there is not to Imperial standard is merely a mild weight upgrade in biocoding. There's enough in there to give a serious fight to any of the 4 Vatras, let alone the winner after they've had a free-for-all. And what do we do about the defense stations that can turn their cannons onto the world and slaughter the people? I am going to handle that. How? Subversion, destruction, and outright theft. How do you steal an entire space station? Do you want a breakdown of my intended operation, or do you want the punchy retort? The real answer. So are you in? The plan is need to know, and you only need to know if... He begins before one of the ships finally opens fire, and things above them descend into a quick flurry of violence before they break off. Almost, they're still too aware of the Empire nearby and not quite angry enough at each other yet. Still, this is a good step forward. She considers for only a second more. He just got the Vatras to fight each other and is blatantly stealing from them. If she reports him and somehow gets him arrested, she'll maybe get a pat on the head and a job offer. But if he is serious, if he can keep this up, fine, I'm in, if only to curtail the damage as best I can. How are you taking over an entire space station? She's learning to fear that smirk. Out of cruel space into a wider galaxy, Part 27. For newest England. Her heart breaks to see the base as it is. Memories of what it was flash before her eyes as the abandoned and dark building and bunker stretch out before her. The shields are still strong, the metal unmarred, and the concrete uncracked. Even the paint is unpeeled. The restoration gilfs have been keeping the whole place intact. But it's not alive. There's nothing here. It's even clean. Here we are, as on the registry. They really didn't care, her companion says as he cracks open a doorway to an armory, and she looks past him. Then reaches in. He slips to the side to let her pass, and she grabs one of the rifles. Before the obsession with coil guns, they had used pulse laser rifles. A simple 8-frequency burst every second. 8 through shields, pierced armor, and had an effective range of 50 meters. She runs it through a check, feeling its power hum in her fingers as she turns it to ensure every component is in pristine condition. It is. The weapon is useless against a proper aircraft. Too little damage on too large a target, but it will put nice little holes into all sorts of things and devour shield batteries. They don't even make these anymore, she says to herself in reverie. They can't. The manufacturing plant was in Chalon City, now Chalon Lake, the man says. I know. I remember that day, she says as she pushes back the echoes of screams long since faded. Many in shock and fear, no one in Chalon had had time to scream, or the ability to after. Her hands tighten around the weapon. It had been the last straw before the Vatras won. The final bit of cruelty before resistance broke. Their most important supply line cut. She hadn't been at this base, but can't imagine it was all that different from what happened here. The final real supply line cut and another offer of surrender. The acceptance of the military higher-ups and the disarming orders. She had protested and then had been used as a scapegoat. Not killed, but stripped of everything and thrown to the streets. They told her in no uncertain terms that fighting would be death. Then they ravaged her home, her planet. The weapon starts to creak in her grip as she remembers those first few days. Her eyes twitching at the indignity, how everyone that tried to help her was punished, and how she had to shift locations again and again, sneaking aboard public access and just moving and moving until she had no idea where on Lavaron she was. Until no one could tell. Then and only then did she slip through the cracks and finally get the room to start building herself up again. There's a crack, and she's pulled out of her mental daze by the weapon breaking ever so slightly. She loosens her grip, and it shifts back into a fully repaired state as she regards the man watching her, and then quickly retrieves a strap for the weapon and slings it over her shoulder. He smirks. "Stop that. This means nothing," she says. "Oh, you're not really impressing me so far. One quick carjacking and a theft so easy you literally walk me in isn't all that good." "Ah, the tough crowd. I love it. Not to mention your plan is absurd." "How so?" he asks. "I think the Vatras and their minions will notice an entire defense station sunken into Lake Orthanega." "You mean the massive deep lake, infamous for having water so high in tritite mineral content that it's poisoned the land around it and repels all scans past the first few centimeters?" "That one?" he asks her, and she frowns. "You failed to mention exactly how you're getting it down there," she says, and he holds out a data chit. "And what's on that?" "A virus. I've been poking around and found a massive flaw in their designs. Each of the defense station is owned by one of the 4 Vatras. This virus just needs a certain key phrase to go berserk while also spamming the key phrase and killing nearly any system it's in for a time, nothing permanent. It would likely take no more than an hour, maybe 2, for them to actually do something about it. I need only 10 minutes to destabilize a station and another 5 for me to get it into Lake Orthanega, rendering it completely invisible to Axiom-based scans, which the Vatras use exclusively. And what will that accomplish? Beyond the enormous amount of resources, information, and the fact I could pilot it out of there to open fire on the other to use as I will, Yui asks. And do what? Get shot out of the sky? No. By that point, I can easily alter its IFF and have it mistaken for numerous things. However, that's not the main point. Then what is the point of stealing a defense station? What it makes the Vatras do? I'm poking them into fighting with each other, bit by bit, and they're eager to fight. But a sudden viral attack in one of their very powerful, very important, and very much needed defense stations is missing. No debris, no wreck, and due to the virus, no properly intercepted communications. Now what will they do? Band together because clearly the Empire is coming for them? Ah, that is an option. Not the one I'd like, but certainly an option. I would prefer if my enemies would simply destroy themselves for me, rather than simply look the wrong way and force me to bloody myself stabbing them in the back. But still useful. What else might they do? Well, if they blame each other, that's a line much further than any of them are willing to tolerate. Their Cold War goes hot. Indeed, there are 12 stations in orbit. Each Vatras controls 3. Each station has sufficient power to destroy another in a single shot. Or a city far below. Correct. There are 12 such horrors pointed at the world. If one goes missing without any warning, they're going to start to shoot at each other. She considers. And since they won't know who did what, they'll spread the damage wide. They'll have 3 stations and 3 targets. Except the one you take from, it'll destroy nearly every station. Correct. And those ones will be massively paranoid before the Vatras try to descend on the ones with the surviving stations. If there are any, we may get lucky, he says with a smile. However, luck or not, we will be in a much better position than before. And what happens after that? That entirely depends on how many stations are left and in whose control they lie. The general plan after that is to get control of them in some manner. How that's done again depends on the circumstances on the ground. No big plan? There can't be. There are simply too many factors to consider and insufficient information to work on. I have a general profile on all 4 Vatras and their commanders. But the problem is that people can be irrational. And to get further information, I'd need to get closer to them for a time. And they're so paranoid that I can only attempt to infiltrate so many times before they start chipping people. Again, chipping people again. When did they chip people? There was a massive overhaul of their forces 7 years ago, remember? I do. That was due to a small rebellion when their forces learned they were chipped without their knowledge and protested strenuously. That nearly freed Laveron on its own. He notes, they've been reluctant to push that far again. These actions will push them back to that self-destructive time in all likelihood. But they may have learned. People aren't static. They're shifting, changing, and growing. Never underestimate an opponent you've bested before. They can always surprise you. Why did you rub your wrist? I used to have a scar there, one with many memories, one where I learned that lesson in bullet point. Literally. I don't get it, she says. Never mind. I think we've spent time enough in this armory. Let's check the operations center next. All right then. She agrees and follows him out. He's already memorized the blueprints, and she knows her way around as this is a copy of the base she was situated at long ago. How do you expect to actually heal Laveron? Let's work with the assumption that you've only got the station that you swiped. It's in perfect shape. The rest are rubble, and only the higher officers in the Vatras are dead, Shelley asks him. Well, for starters, there's a cash crop growing as a weed on this planet. There's also so much tritite in the western mountain reaches that the rivers pool into Lake Orthanaga to create a water so dense in tritite it's completely opaque and cannot be scanned through. No one mines or needs it, which is beyond idiotic. It may be the least valuable of the currency minerals, but it's still literally printing money to mine it. Printing money. Many people on Earth use paper currency. To print money is to have more money without consequences. And while less valuable than the other metals, it's simply because there's so much. The market cannot possibly be any more flooded with tritite than it is. So even at the rate of tritite to tritite, there's so much available in those blue mountains that we can easily invest in numerous industries such as farming, textiles, metallurgy, manufacturing. Many of the places that rebelled held those valuable factories and plants. So we need to rebuild them. We need to get people taught how to run these factories so they can have money in their pockets, food in their stomachs, and hope in their futures. Nothing for the service industry, she asks. It's still flourishing despite things, mostly because the Vatras are vain like that and enjoy the idea of servants. I mean, really, does every despot have to have an ego that eclipses their territory? The man asks in frustration. All right then, now, who are you? Really? She asks, suddenly stopping and pointing the rifle at him. She has him dead to rights. My name is Philip, he says with a smile. I was wondering how long until you grew sick of waiting for a real name. Why the secrecy? Force of habit, I've been an agent of the British Crown my entire life. I reached retirement age, retired, then got a final call to service, along with sealed orders. Those orders, when unsealed, have brought me here. And the order is? To ensure 2 stars shine on the British Empire, he says. So this is just conquest. She spits at him. He turns fully and holds his arms out. Very well then, if you think I would be worse for the home you love so dearly, then shoot, he tells her, and she sucks in a breath. Go right ahead, I am thoroughly defenseless. Please, if I am as terrible or worse than the forces that have ravaged your home and culture, then shoot me in the heart. He steps forward until her rifle barrel is pressing him in the chest. Only the greatest of adepts could dodge at this range. A little twitch, and he's dead. Both of them are still. Then he smirks at her and steps back and away, then turns around as she lowers the rifle. I don't need to hear your answer, my dear. You've been through a great deal and are wary of being harmed again. I fully understand. Do you? I do, perhaps in the exact same way as you, but I know very much what it's like to lose everything and to trace it all back to someone that you would have killed and died for. I see. I assume that the details are on another planet and even more confusing than your occasional odd saying. Oh, likely, unless you've developed some form of clairvoyance in the last 30 seconds, he says with a smile. Not that I'm aware of. Capital. Now then, shall we check on the main operations center? Or will we be playing with the laser a little more, he asks, and she holds it up, her hand well away from the trigger. Pew pew, she says, shaking the laser, and he chuckles. Very droll, shall we? Yes, we shall. But how do you plan on defending Laveron? The Empire will likely not take it well when the Vatras are dead. The only reason they're being put up with is because they used to be full Empire and still pay tribute at times. I'm preserving that station for a reason, but one alone is not enough. So other tricks will be needed. Such as? Right now they're nothing but gigantic cannons pointing downward. Always downward by default. The first step is to point them in the other direction. A good first step. The second is to further equip it. A hangar bay for fighter pilots, differing kinds of cannons, interdiction and scrambling antenna. Each of those stations is built off a modular design and wasting so much of its potential. Yes, because each of the Vatras knows that if they up-arm their stations, the others will as well. And they can already carve trenches into the planet visible from space. They don't need more. And if everything goes pear-shaped for them? Goes what? Pardon? If everything goes wrong for them? Philip clarifies, and she considers. Everything? Well, people like them are prone to exaggeration. If a station goes missing at random and they start shooting at each other, with only a few left in the aftermath, will they not say that everything is going wrong? Oh, likely, Shelley remarks before smiling, and how nice it would be to see it happen. Oh yes, to be a fly on the wall at such moments, he says in a musing tone, and they share a laugh. Out of Cruel Space into a Wider Galaxy, Part 28. For Newest England. The command center is dark, full of foreboding shapes that remind her of days. She's snapped out of that bit of introspection as Philip finds the light switch, and the room goes from almost haunting to merely empty and quiet. Do you think any of your old codes will work on this? Or am I going to brush up on my hacking skills? Philip asks as he opens the side of a roundabout desk and slips inside. He taps on the desktop and a screen activates, awaiting his input. Shelley walks up and presses a few holographic buttons. The screen opens up and Philip begins reading through. She presses a few more and he gives her a sideways look. What? I'm still learning your local language. Ah, really? How interesting. she says, and she starts reading faster and quickly comes upon something interesting. Madam, please. It's rather funny that someone who thinks they can conquer an entire world doesn't even fully know the language, considering how often such a thing occurs across the galaxy, to the point that I'm aware of at least 9 such scenarios within a week's travel happening right now. I do not think my difficulty is so unusual. He chides her. 9? Really? Well, technically 17, but many of them are tied up in each other, multiple stations and planets being invaded by a single large force sort of thing. He answers, Oh, well, I just found something interesting. Follow me. I need to see this for myself, and you will want to as well. Oh, good. Is the rumored armored division still supplied? It looks to be that way. We might have more firepower than I thought. Very good, he says, standing up and sliding over the desk to follow her out. I had actually thought that heavier things like the armor would have been taken and at least repurposed. They're in the Gavali Empire colors. Could it be something that petty? She asks herself in awe. Really? I would expect people of their character to at least find some joy in having them repainted rather than simply abandoned. It's an enormous waste, Sir Philip chides before pausing and chuckling. Of course. The stations. That's where their pride is. Well, bully for them. My plan is going to work even better now. Oh, really? Think about it. If that readout was accurate, there are 2 squads worth of mobile armor in here. That's the kind of hardware that is never abandoned without good reason. But if that reason is severe pride in another piece of equipment, then we'll get all the attention, Shelley says, following his train of logic. Wait, how do you know there are 2 squads worth on the registry I checked? I'm learning your language, not totally ignorant. I can read it just fine. I just need some more time than I'd like, he remarks as they head down and he swipes a key card into lock of the door. Shelley turns on the lights and both of them pause. Magnificent, Philip says with a smirk. Wonderful. Absolutely wonderful, Shelley says in awe as she beholds the rows upon rows of towering battlewalkers, far more than any 5 squadrons would use. There was a rumor about one of the bases being used as storage, but that it was this one is just good luck. Bad luck as well. There's barely any room in this hangar. To say nothing of how much is needed for these beasts to maneuver, it's why I prefer a tank myself. But a heavily armed combat walker with the ability to entrench itself to become artillery is an acceptable second place, Philip says as he walks up to the nearest massive weapons platform. It's easily 100 tons in weight, and while it has several cannons pointed forward, the real prize is on the back. This is old-school firepower. The Empire has moved away from this kind of combat doctrine, and the Vatras have followed. These things are old, but they'll still hit like a meteor, Shelley says as she remembers the fast things running around in all sorts of configurations as a massive contest was held for which one would be the main combat walker of the Empire. In the end, they had settled on flight-capable bipedal platform, very light compared to these stompers, but comparably fragile. Yes, they're not very fast, but they're mobile, all-terrain artillery units. If we can get our hands on something more modern from the Vatras to support and screen these beasts, we might be able to take a station down, especially if it's been damaged to begin with. Maybe one. If there are 2 left, then the second will be able to shoot us into a crater before our shots can reach it. As powerful as these weapons are, we need the element of surprise for them to work, she says, going over the hunched-over posture of the massive battle mech. And more modern armor will dance circles around these girls and reduce them to slag before they can get a shot off. These beasts are slow and mean, but slow gets you shot down, which means we need to think of them more like semi-mobile emplacements, Philip remarks as he climbs up the ladder to the entry port in the side and pops it open. My word, it has the new car smell. The new car smell? The smell of chemicals and such used in manufacture. This particular piece of equipment was never even used before being placed here in storage. Wicked waste, he says derisively before closing the door. So what do you think of our odds now? Getting better, but I'll need to do some digging. I was in charge of ground forces, not armored. I'll need to see if any of my old friends in command are still around to find someone that can lead a force like this. Good lass, Philip says as he hops down and lands with barely a bend to his knees. We have 120 of these walkers. which, considering the yield of their artillery lasers, they just barely equal the output of a single station. Wouldn't they go over? No, wait. Each individual beam would be distorted at least somewhat, and the single large one from the station would have less interference. So it would come to roughly the same amount, just a little bit of power one way or the other. She mutters as she does the math. Still, we have the equivalent of a station on the ground. That's big, really big. It is, and it's something to keep very close to the chest. If any of the Vatras realize there's a direct, pound-per-pound, threat to their power, they can and will do something about it. Stealth is wealth in this scenario, and we need to be wealthy indeed to pull this off. You just quoted something, she remarks, and he smirks. Yes, I spent some time undercover as a burglar and petty thief. The things you learn in criminal circles, my dear, why, it'd make your hair go white, he says, and she considers, thinks, and then comes to a realization. So how much of your thieving skills have you used here today? In this building? Precious few. And actually casing the area I got the key cards and authentication from? Quite a few. Proper criminality needs both patience and audacity at the appropriate times, Philip says as he glances down the way. There seems to be some modifications near the back. Those are likely the battle walkers that I assumed would be here. So you were expecting some. I was expecting at worst some moldering parts and tools left over from Valiant's and Determined squadrons, he admits. At best, I was hoping for the entire squadron's walkers. Maintaining all these battle walkers is going to be an enormous issue. Can't win but for winning? Almost, he admits. There are so many opportunities that are opening up. Opportunities for whom? For you and yours, while each one of these behemoths might need 100 siblings to match a station. Those stations are designed to leave wounds on worlds. These armors will work as defensive emplacements that can get up and walk away. A station they'll struggle with one-to-one, but they can and likely will leave gruesome holes in capital ships, Philip says. So you don't intend these to be brought out until after you do your insane stunt and steal a station? She asks. That's correct, Philip notes as he leads her through the rows upon rows of combat walkers and inspects them all in a quick scan to see if any of them jump out at him. He pauses at seeming random and runs his finger over one of the legs and finding the paint cracking off and peeling. Must have been produced while the Vatras were taking the planet. Not enough time to get a second coat of paint. How did you see that? She asks him. Because I was looking for it, he replies. You were looking for brittle and cracking paint? I was looking for defects. We'll get a trusted engineer in here to give everything a look over. For all we know, each of these walkers are just waiting to fall apart, and a proper push from the side will cause it to crumble, Philip says, and Shelley gathers some axiom and shoulder checks the nearest walker. It sways ever so slightly. You can fight a battle walker? They're powerful, but they have weaknesses, especially when they're powered down. She answers and he smiles. Excellent. Now then, shall we see what kind of modifications Valiant and Determined made to their walkers? He asks as he leads her further back, and Shelley sighs. Oh dear. Yes, Shelley says as she beholds the decal on the side of a walker that just shows a Horgwa man made of muscles and holding a plasma cannon as the only thing keeping him decent. To her surprise, Philip actually laughs at the sight of it before mimicking the pose of flexing all the muscles while having a firm and suggestive grip on the cannon. What do you think? He asks, and she shakes her head in amusement. I think you're a little overdressed for it. She chides him. You don't take offense? My dear woman, I count on it, he replies. Of course, if someone's brain's in their crotch, then they're not doing too well in a fight. Exactly so, Philip answers. So, do you have enough to be ready? I need to see one more place, the most important place in any military base. Ah, yes, how could I possibly forget? Philip asks. Of all the places to have most of the tools go missing, I must admit, I didn't expect it from the kitchens. Philip notes somewhat ruefully. People can't explain having a spatula, frying pan, or big serving spoon, even butcher knives and the like. Not so much a massive battle walker. Very true, dear girl. Very true indeed, he notes as he finds bare cupboards, empty shelves, and nothing at all left in the kitchen, stasis storage, or pantry. Did they just walk out with everything that wasn't bolted down? No, The chairs in the mess hall are mostly here, Shelley says, turning the light on in the mess hall and chuckling at what she sees. Mostly, Philip demands, and then he pokes his head in and scans the room. Unbelievable. Looks like a quarter, maybe? She asks, indicating the missing chairs. Roughly, he replies. This is going to be less complicated to replace than potentially missing walkers, but still aggravating. Good luck with that. I'll get to talking to some friends of mine. If nothing else, they'll love the chance for a front row seat into whatever you're about to do. Ah, good. How are you going to take control of a space station? Manual override during the viral attack. I'll need to be in engineering to do it, and once we're in the lake, I can deal with the rest of the crew at my leisure as things will be cut off from the outside world as the chaos ensues. And what about Proton-based communications? No amount of interference can get around that. Yes, that's why I need to select my target and time carefully. Scouting is very important after all, he says. Proton can be scanned for and detected with ease. I hit those while my forces take the engine room and take us down. And who are you getting? That depends entirely on how easily swayed the engineering staff are. Several of the stations have some very likely prospects, and I have the meeting with the first of them in, he checks his watch, 3 hours. You're already on it. Yes. How? It turns out that the crew you can't parade around or can't threaten you with violence tend to be underestimated by despots. It's almost like those obsessed with power are unfamiliar with the extremely important details of things such as upkeep. Really? Well, that's the obvious explanation. The more serious one is that people that grasp at power often over or under-delegate. Those that over-delegate are often preening fools that are best ignored. Give them some cookies and shove them in a corner with a model and they're out of your hair. Those that are obsessively in control and under-delegate simply stretch themselves too thin, tire themselves out, and miss important details. From my understanding, the engineering staff of several stations are moderately paid, but routinely ignored and will take a pay cut if things go wrong. Even if it was the ignoring that caused the situation to begin with. Right. Okay. Holy goddess. Even when things were working well, there were weaknesses you could have danced through, weren't there? No system is perfect, and the trick to infiltration is to find the weaknesses. Although the best advice is to generally go for being as low-ranked as you can pretend to be in your infiltrating. That way, less people will be concerned with who you are and why you're there. But then anyone can order you around, and following those orders lets you get all over the place in a ready-made scapegoat for all kinds of things. Every issue is an opportunity if you play it that way. Are you trying to make me into a spy? Ah, pardon me. I've spent so long teaching the habit has stuck. Teaching? Teaching who? A pair of most adept students that I had the pleasure of seeing blossom into masters. You really enjoy answering questions without answering them, don't you? Occupational hazard, my dear, along with sudden mortality if I let myself slip. Out of Cruel Space into a Wider Galaxy, Part 29, for Newest England. Shelley parts ways with Philip at the entrance to the base, both of them with a vehicle of their own that had not been there beforehand. No, seriously, where did you get the bikes? She asks him as he smirks. Oh, here and there. Sign here and this bike is legally yours. Good grief. So you got them at separate locations, and they're still under warranty? Where are you getting your resources? The Vatras are kindly funding their own demise. Entirely voluntarily, I'm sure. She replies dryly. Of course, he says as he passes off the keys to her. Have fun. I assume you have a license for me too. Of course. She says, accepting the up-to-date and seemingly completely legal driver's license for the airbike. You knew I'd accept. I considered the odds good enough that I bought that in advance. I didn't take a test. Legally, you did. The law is just your playground, isn't it? No, it's a deep pool of madness and cruelty that I thankfully know how to fish from. I've seen what happens when people can truly play with laws. Oh, yeah? Yes, I had to retrieve contracts for the souls of over 500 men, Philip says, and she pauses, considers, and then just gives him a baffled look. The trip out of Cruel Space was very boring, and we had a full staff of skilled and at times unscrupulous lawyers. Would a contract like that even work in any way? She asked. We were not certain, but it was determined to be a risk, which made it fully unacceptable. Philip replies and she chuckles. Not every mission someone like me gets sent on is pulse-pounding action. More than once I was sent after a high-ranking diplomat who vanished, only to arrive just as they returned, wearing clothing they had no business wearing, or recollection owning, and smelling of a brewery and a brothel. How often does that happen? She asks. More than once, he says with a smirk. I'm starting to hate that smirk. She remarks. Then I suggest you develop one of your own. And how do I do that? The trick is to be willing to do something, anything. Finding the right answer is a matter of experience and training. But so long as you have an answer, then you're ahead of most people. That's what most people call apex. That's easier said than done, she says, and he nods. Yes, it is. Somewhat easier for species like humanity, but far from impossible for a Platon like yourself. In fact, I dare say you're most of the way there yourself, to say nothing of the field girls you know. Philip says, yeah, big secret of the apex, it's just easier for them to do something. Woo, Shelley mocks as she wiggles her fingers. How mysterious and frightening. Yes, many wealthy things are just that. Very, very simple when you break them down, Philip admits. Now then, is there anything more you need before we part ways? What are you doing with that up-armed air car you stole? I set an autopilot in it, and the drones will detach before heading elsewhere. It will look like the girls inside were subverted and went on a joyride, he says simply, which isn't going to be good. Not for them, no, especially with all four sides getting stories that conflict. Brahmastra will think she's been attacked by Blythe. Blythe will think her soldiers subverted and look for where to pin the blame. Shun will be paranoid as all get out as the piece of Brahmastra's territory the air car will be found in is right next to hers, and Milena will see opportunity. I can't wait to see the result of this next bit of drama. Do you ever stop? She asks. No, and that's one of the tricks. Get busy and stay busy. Busy people find opportunity. Busy people get lucky, he says, leaning in a few times until they're nearly nose to nose, and she marvels at just how vibrant he can make brown eyes look. He then pulls back and she really wishes he hadn't. Now then, I must be off. I do have a space station crew to subvert after all, and I did just espouse the benefits of busyness. That you did. If nothing else, the stories I'm going to get out of this Satoshn are worth whatever kind of madness you drag me into, she says. Glad to hear it. Not concerned with surviving? He asks. Me? Nah, I'm immortal. Careful now, I've seen more than one person find themselves instantly proven wrong after making similar proclamations. Philip chides her with a smile. How many? More than one. Of course. Why would I expect anything else? She asks, and he shrugs. I don't know, dear. Why did you expect anything else? Why indeed? She tosses back at him, and he chuckles. Now you're getting it. Best of luck. I must be going now. Wargul. Hato. He says, kissing his index finger, booping her on the nose with it, and then sauntering to his own air cycle and taking off to leave her standing there and staring. Renari fidgeted as she landed her shuttle, and she takes a ticket so that she can pay for her parking. A high-stress job followed by the random inspections around payday, where you had to bribe the morale officers to go the hell away, costing at least half your paycheck at the best. This time she didn't do too well. Sure, she was left with more than most girls, but for the sheer stress, nonsense, and madness of her job, she needed at least 10 times her final takeaway. Still, she has a date that had come out of nowhere on that APP, and finally seemed like her fortunes were turning. Maybe. Handsome man like him no doubt has a big money girl right behind him, and she'll likely have to jump through a few dozen hoops, but it will be worth it. She adjusts her blouse a bit. The timing was awful, and she didn't have time to change out of her uniform. But lots of men like a woman in uniform. Even if hers has some coolant stains, she can spin that into a story. Right? Oh, goddess, she hopes so. She needs a win. Table 7, table 7, table. She says to herself just as the fan in the restaurant shifts, and she sees dark brown feathered hair get tousled by the artificial wind. He's sipping at a glass of water and toasts her. his shining eyes all but capturing hers in a moment. The music in the restaurant is a light local drum beat with accompanying strings. But in her mind, there is something brassy that's being worked by Master. She walks over, barely able to believe it. He's even more handsome in real life, a strong face with a smile that seems to carry a full and deep knowledge of things. She barely even notices herself sit down, but when she finally has to blink, she snaps out of it and with a start tries to apologize for showing up so dirty too. "It's all right." His voice is soft as velvet. It's all right," he assures her. "I was nearly late getting. The traffic was murder even on an air cycle." "You ride an air cycle?" "I can drive anything that can move and pilot anything that can fly," he says with a dazzling smile. "Oh dear, that was a bit redundant, wasn't it?" "Oh, I don't mind at all," she says. "So, you're Mr. Masterson?" "I haven't heard of that family. I'm new to the area and the local dating scene," he admits, and she pauses, considers, and then asks, "And how has your family taken to you being here?" "Oh, the rest of my family is on the homeworld. I've personally moved here." "Oh, just you and your wives?" "No, just me," he says, and then her eyes widen and then narrow. "This whole thing is a setup." "No, I'm not a loyalty test by Vitras, Shun. I can assure you of that." "Then how did you know I was thinking about that?" she snaps at him. "Because I called you here for a reason, an offer. You're allowed to say no. If that happens, then this is just a date, and after it," he gives her a once-over. "Well, I wouldn't say no to helping you get clean." He's hitting on her. Still, despite admitting he's up to something. "What do you want?" she asks with her guard up. Now that she isn't letting herself go all goo-eyed, she can get a better look at him without being lost in the details. Strong face, strong frame, and very, very strong gaze. This is no Meowing house husband or seducer. This is someone dangerous. Very, very dangerous, and Vitras Shun's moral officers seem somehow less than the man before her. And those monsters could have her killed in a moment's notice. This one, he'd do the killing himself. "Your help and the help of as many friends as you can manage," he says simply. "To do what?" she demands, and he looks around before placing a device on the table and activating it. Her communicator powers down, and after a few moments, the device flashes green. He pockets it again. "I want the Vatras gone, and I need the help of a woman like you to have it happen," he says, and her jaw drops. "Are you?" she begins before she hears the door open, and she looks back, past where the cashier is struggling with the machine that the man's bug has clearly disabled it, which is probably a bad thing as Moral Officer Jericho is here. The man is handsome, sure, but the general expression as if everyone around him is covered in excrement. The dark yellow uniform is not flattering, no matter how much Vitras Shun insists it looks like gold, and Renari very much disagrees. "Engineer Renari Stripe," Officer Jericho snarls before marching up. "Why did you leave your post in such an unholy knee-high boots, glossy yellow, pants tucked in, also yellow, brown leather belt with Kutha buckle, yellow coat with Kutha lace bands around the sleeves over a formal shirt, popped collar because why not add to this travesty and to put a hideous bow on this abomination of an ensemble? You're wearing a piss-yellow commissar cap with a Kutha skull crest. Honestly, man, was there a worse dressed at work competition? Was the theme water sports in the filthiest way imaginable?" Philip asks, and Officer Jericho pauses before turning a furious look at him. "Do you know who I am?" "No," Philip answers while sipping his water. "I am Officer Jericho Dawn. You will address me with respect." "No," Philip answers once again. "What?" "No. Unless my brushing up on the local language has fallen through, the word does indeed indicate a negative, does it not?" "It does." "Then we understand each other perfectly fine." I said no. "And who do you think you are?" "Let's not change the subject here. We have yet to establish who you are," Philip states. "I just said I am Officer Jericho Dawn, you imbecile." "It wasn't the name I was looking for. Honestly, any fool can rattle off any number of syllables together and pretend it means something grand." "Why should I care that I am faced with an Officer Jericho Dawn?" Philip asks. "Listen here, you cretin. First off, it's pronounced cretin. If you're going to threaten me, do it properly, such as if a certain Cretan doesn't remember his manners, he's going to find himself misplaced, Philip says, and the man bristles and pulls out a plasma pistol, only to freeze before he can aim it as he's looking down a sparking pistol. Drawing a weapon on an officer under Vatrashun is punishable by death, Jericho says slowly, and Philip scoffs. So you're saying that from this point onwards, I can do whatever I want because the state will try to kill me no matter what? Philip asks, and Jericho blinks as he feels his threat backfire. Now, why are you in such a tizzy about me having a date with Renari? I am checking for disloyalty and, jumping the gun a bit, the Vatras will not be pleased. Philip notes spinning the situation. He might have to abandon going after his first choice of station thanks to this paranoid man. But he can use this as well. So this was never a date, Renari states. Oh, it still is a date. The problem is that I have a lot going on and now Mr. Jericho here has stuck himself into it. What do you mean? Well, I have a lot to do, an employer to report to after all, and success makes me excited. So why don't I tie this idiot up, stuff him in a sack, and have him sent to my employer in an autopiloted vehicle as we have a little fun? If nothing else, it's going to be one hell of a story. Is there any way I can, save him? For my job's sake. No, but you can get laid out of this, Philip offers, and Renari thinks, considers, and then shrugs. Capital! He pulls the trigger and Officer Jericho crumples to the ground before the man can protest. So you've sent him back to your boss, just like that? You do know this could very well provoke open war between the Vatras, Renari says. I do, Philip says simply. Now then, there's a nearby hotel with a reservation. One big bed between the two of us. Of course, if you want more after, you'll have to agree to a few things. Such as, well, I have a simple question for you. And that is, are you willing to risk it all for the ultimate prize? And what would that prize be, she asks. The world, my dear. Will you risk it all for Laveron? Tell you what, you make me scream loud enough for a noise complaint, and I'll listen to whatever kind of pitch you can imagine tomorrow, Renari says. Deal, Philip answers. Out of Cruel Space into a Wider Galaxy, Part 30. For Newest England, as Philip is convincing Renari to come around to his point of view, Shelley was still moving. Moving with purpose and dignity, she barely avoids crashing the air cycle and slams on the brakes, which nearly throws her out of the seat as she pants to try and get control of things. Woo, I think he was a little quick to give me that license, she says to herself before shaking her head and focusing. Come on, just a bit further and it'll be at Matha's place. The engine roars to life and she jolts as she tries to control it, moving quickly and then past her destination. She starts swearing under her breath as she finally decides to get full control of this thing and make it hers. It's only been jerking her around for 5 minutes and she's ready to break it. She starts weaving and throwing herself into, around, and onto whatever difficulties she has to try and figure the infernal machine out. It's not even a performance air cycle, it's just a standard if well-made model. She spends nearly a full hour trying to get a better feel for things and eventually comes into a landing that is, if not smooth, then at least serviceable. She nods to herself as she gets off the damn thing. She doesn't have a vehicle, couldn't afford one, and had been endlessly jerked around by local admin anyways. It is you. When did you get a cycle? What you want? She's or Matha says, and Shelley turns her head and grins at the sight of her. Sergeant Drive, good to see you again. Commander. Been a while, she says, smirking. The girl, however, is the type that refused her commission because she wanted to stay on the field. She should put things together in 3, 2... No. Yes, Shelley says. Honestly, you were wasted as a sergeant. I didn't trust anyone else to lead my girls in the field. Now, about what's happening, is the plan a good one? Uses Vatras traits against them, and if nothing else, will up-arm everyone involved. All right, I need to take a look. Where do I go? You remember where... Shelley checks the area. Maybe devices, so she walks up to Matha and leans in. Linway. We're reactivating Linway Base. Some of its supplies are missing, but it's perfectly preserved. They use that for storage of older battle walkers. They did. We have 120 of them that are, if not combat ready, then close. That's barely on the same level of a single bombardment from a single station. That won't do much. Not unless there's a plan to take those out of commission. My new friend is working on that right now. Shelley says. And does your friend have a name? Philip. Anything else? A last name? A clan name? What species is he? Human. Oh, wait, wasn't there a second human ship that just showed up? Yes. I'm going to get some of our old data crunchers to see what they know about Philip. The man is having far too much fun being mysterious, and we need to know if it's time to loot Linway Base to the bedrock and scatter, or if we gather there and wait for him to call, Shelley says, and Matha nods. All right, I've kept track of my squad, and they had friends in other squads. I'll get everyone up and running and make our way to Linway. Is anything missing? They took everything but some chairs and tables out of Chow Hall, so don't expect preserved food or the tools to make a proper meal there. Got it, Mathis says before grinning. It's good to see you again, Commander. Although I suggest you work on your cycle skills a bit, I expected to need to call an ambulance after the first pass. Thank you for your concern, but I need a bit more than that. I need your judgment and proper consideration. You're one of the best, if not the best field commander we ever had. If anyone can see a problem and talk me out of this, or talk the others into it if it's worth it, then it's you. Well, for that I need to hear more, and we need to have this talk somewhere else. Can I trust you not to kill us both if I ride with you? Matha asks. Yes, hop on, Shelley says, and Matha nods. Blue uniformed women rush around and take up positions around the aircar. It had given out all the codes, all the proper codes without exception, but hadn't answered a single call. So the forces of Vatras Milana were ready and tense. Power armor wearing troops with blue frames and the latest and greatest combat walkers of the Gavali Empire, the vaguely masculine-shaped Titan stood large enough to be to a bull Conador what that Conador would be to a Gob woman, capable of easily fielding, swapping out, and skillfully using weapons best suited for gunships or outright destroyers. They could quickly and effectively get truly amazing amounts of damage to wherever they wanted. So what if they didn't have much armor? You need to hit them first, and that's hard to do when it can race a starfighter and is throwing enough death around to make a capital ship take them seriously. To the last, the guards are reptilian, Yorgos are taking up the majority of the ranks. Vatras Milana did not trust the hot-blooded mammals or the twisted insects of the galaxy, and the less said about feathered species or aquatic ones, the better. The aircar was autopiloted in. It had even landed in the middle of the hangar bay and not in a proper parking space. Whoever sent it knew where they were to the millimeter, and that, if nothing else, had the base on edge. A smaller soldier rushes up and then pops the trunk. There's a strangled protest from a yellow-clad figure tied up in the trunk. "What the hell?" the soldier asks, reaching in to grab a card taped to the man's coat. "Fondest regards, Lady Blythe." Lady Blythe? Lady Blythe? Does that insane girl think she has... Lady Milena demands, forcing her way forward. The Yorgwa woman is in a bipedal form like most of her forces, but there is heavy emphasis on her tail, which is long, strong, and capable of crushing a woman alive in its coils. Normally a Nagasha trick, but she had made a point of growing it out as such to kill a Nagasha with it. Just for the sake of irony, she grabs the card from her soldier and glares at it. This card wasn't made in Blythe's territory. "My Vatras?" her soldier asks. "Look at this. Either Brahmastra's trying to frame Blythe, or Blythe is trying to frame Brahmastra. Either way, Shun will load this." Milena saws as she crushes the card. "Someone is trying to set us up to fight, and when I find who... The Empire, my Vatras? Maybe. They prefer grand gestures, but they are capable of this level of cunning," Milena says before reaching down and removing Jericho's gag. "Vatras Shun will see through your pathetic ruse and rain fire from the sky upon you. I am one of her favored sons. You will..." She puts the gag back in place as Jericho rants to cut him off. "I'm sure a hot-blooded Tret will put the fear of the goddess in me. Oh, please, take him to a cell so I can think about what to do with him. And pull this vehicle apart. I want to know where every piece of it came from the rivets up." she orders before turning her back on the vehicle as Jericho is forced out of it and slung over the soldier's shoulder. Someone's playing with me, and to make it worse, I can't tell who because their first move is to do this. She snarls to herself as she prowls out of the room. Shun will near inevitably send spies or assassins after her for this, if not open warfare. Everyone is on the edge. But one thing is clear. One of the other Vatras is messing with her, and she will not stand for it. She will find which of them is doing this. Then there will be blood. Those mammals think they're clever? She will make them beg for mercy. All right, the nice side of this chapter is finished. If you're wondering what Philip is up to, it's a very adult thing in the naughty side. Please visit his Reddit with Chapter 30 NSFW.